Throughout heaven and earth, I alone am the honored one. Here's your look at the Threezero Jujutsu Kaisen Satoru Gojo. FigZero's 1/6 scale Satoru Gojo is approximately 12.4 inches tall and is a fully articulated collectible figure with over 32 points of articulation. The head is sculpted by renowned sculptor Akinori Takaki, and the materials used for the figure are mainly PVC and ABS. The character's signature costume includes a fabric jacket and slacks. The figure comes with 2 interchangeable face parts, a blindfolded face and bare face, 2 interchangeable hair parts, hair up and hair down, and 8 sets of interchangeable hands, including Gojo's signature Jujutsu technique gestures. First things first, let's go ahead and grab the tape measure just to see how tall this Satoru Gojo figure stands. I suppose technically that'd be second. The first thing, of course, I would like to do is thank the folks over at Threezero that did provide this sample, though, of the Jujutsu Kaisen Satoru Gojo. We can have a look at this review. What we're going to also do as well is I'm going to bring in the other figures that we've looked at thus far, the other 3 figures, and I'll show you guys comparisons with those. Back to measuring, though. Satoru stands, in this case, 12 inches exactly, or the figure's going to be 30 centimeters tall. Let's just jump back to the beginning to where we started our reviews of the Jujutsu Kaisen figures, when the first figure we had a look at was Yuji Itadori. Yuji Itadori, for its time, was a tall figure, but though now comparing him along with Satoru Gojo, you can see he is quite a bit shorter. Speaking of short figures, segueing ourselves over to the smallest figure that we looked at from this line, that's Nabaro Kujisaki. In this case, she doesn't even go to the shoulder area of Gojo. And then the most recent figure we also had a look at, who again I thought was tall at the time, just getting him to stand here. Here's what he also looks like with Megumi Fushiguro. Now in this case, it's obviously seeing all the 4 figures on display. Clearly Satoru Gojo is the tallest of the 4. When it comes to Gojo's accessories, he does get quite a lot, although he doesn't seem to get as much as maybe the other 3 figures we've already had a look at. The figure comes included with some swapped out hands, and I suppose before we start talking about his various hands, because they're all sort of tied then into the different summons and curses that he uses, I did want to draw your attention to the fact that the figure does come included once again with swapped out wrist pegs. But what was funny, though, is the fact that not that I'm really going to be using a lot of these, he seemed to have the smallest quantity of wrist pegs, while the other figures may have had anywhere from 4 to 6 extra pegs. Poor when it comes to Satoru, he only comes with a pair of extra pegs. Go sparingly with these. Not that you really ever have, well, at least I've never really had an issue so far with any of the pegs breaking on any of these figures that we've looked at so far, but it's always nice to have those extra ones readily available, just in case you need them. Okay, then on to the figure's hands. Now we're going to start kind of just, well, we're going to work our way across. First, the figure comes in the left hand, or left half open hand, which essentially is just a gripping or grabbing hand. It's molded once again nicely in a very pale kind of plastic. Again, they've sculpted nicely each of the individual fingernails on the end digits of his hand. I'm going to move those to the side. The figure also comes included with just a straight right opened hand, just a relaxed hand. Oh, I guess more of a gestured hand than anything else. Once again, pale plastic, you're getting treated to. But again, nicely sculpted hands overall. Pretty consistently the same color as all the other figures we've looked at so far from the Kaisen line. So I would imagine you could mix and match these if you really wanted to. The figure also comes included with, now this hand I think is specifically for holding or removing part of his blindfold, as one of the things that the figure comes included with is a blindfold that covers across his face. What's rather interesting is that he actually comes with 2 variations of a head portrait, one that already has the blindfold across his eyes, and then one that has a partial blindfold, and then you can kind of use then this hand sort of looking like he's pulling back the blindfold. We're going to get back to this hand in a moment. The figure also comes included with the right cursed technique or reversal red hand. Now this, of course, will come then handy when we look at the actual add-on effect piece that's going to come included with the figure as well. Wait, talk about that now? Okay, we can talk about that now. One thing I did want to draw your attention to, just actually before we beeline over to the red effect piece, is that the figure comes with kind of 2 variations of somewhat the same pointing hand. The one that has the thumb is technically just the pointing hand. The one, though, that has the thumb just bent in is actually the right cursed technique reversal hand. Essentially what you're going to be doing is you're going to take this piece, this construct piece. Boy, that looks nice. It's made of translucent red plastic. The plastic itself does have a little bit of give, but I don't want to be tempting fate too much by pressing this in. I would imagine if you're not too careful, some of these plastic pieces could break. But if you look at the bottom of it, what's really cool about it is they put a little hole. I don't know if you guys can actually see it or not. It might be even easier, in fact, if I take the hand Now, you'll see there's the hole right there. So what you'll do is you'll take the finger of the hand and you'll just plug that in place. You really have to apply a lot more pressure than really what I was expecting. Get that as far in there as you can without running any risk of breaking it. And then he's got himself, again, the cursed technique reversal. Well, basically the cursed summons that he uses. I think that's fun, the fact that they would have found the way to attach that onto the hand. I suppose technically they could have had this as already permanently attached to the hand. But again, like it's not really that difficult to put on. You just want to make sure you're putting it far enough that, of course, the effect piece doesn't fall off in the process. I think we're imagining I'm probably going to be going back to that, I think, in final looks. The figure also then comes included. This is actually, you know what, now that I want to backtrack myself a bit, I did say earlier that the blindfold hand was this one right over here, and that's not actually the case. This is the right hollow purple hand. This is the hand that actually is used for pulling back the blindfold. You can see that they are gestured differently from one another, making the mistake earlier of mentioning that this was the blindfolded hand, when in actual fact this was the right hollow purple hand. This was the hand for, of course, pulling back the blindfold. The last hand that a figure also comes included with as well. Now, this one does look like he's just wishing himself luck, or perhaps he's telling someone a fib, and he's got this behind his back. In actual fact, this is the right domain expansion unlimited void hand. Try remembering that 5 times fast. But again, it's nicely molded. Again, if you just wanted to have your figure with crossed fingers, there's that option also available as well. Changing the hands isn't that difficult. In fact, we're going to go ahead, for example. Let's go ahead and I'll show you guys how the construct piece works. Just carefully remove it. The existing, by the way, he does have closed fists on the, obviously, the defaulted hands. I did want to mention that a little bit, of course, before we start removing the hands, but let's just go ahead and remove one hand for right now. It's fairly easy to remove. Just remove it from the peg. Put the figure down here for a second. I will remove it for right now because I just want to take off the cursed technique reversal right now, and I'm going to put the hand on first just because I think it's going to be a little bit easier to do that. Once again, you just want to hold on to the peg because the peg is going to swivel back and forth just a little bit, and then just sort of wiggle the hand then back onto the post. When you think you've got it far enough in there, there we go, then you can just bend the elbow, and then you can go ahead, take yourself the effect piece. And again, as we've already discussed, the effect sort of just then sits onto his finger, carefully twisting onto his finger. One thing I will say, at least, that's good about the fingers, they're soft enough plastic, because I think if they were using a harder plastic, it would be something that most likely would be breaking if, of course, you're pushing down on it and the finger just happens to snap. That's what the effect piece looks like, of course, in his hands. You could go with probably a little bit more of a creative pose than I've got it displayed right now, but man, does that ever look super cool. We're going to go ahead right now and take that off for, at least right now, we're going to put that to the side. The other thing that the figure comes included with as well is a series of swapped out heads. What's interesting, though, about him is that Satoru actually comes with 2 variations of faceplate, but then he also comes with 2 variations of hair. And now you think to yourself, okay, you're just going to simply remove one head piece, you're going to replace it then with the other. Not the case at all. In fact, to pick the figure up first and show you guys the difference between the two, obviously the bare face is the one that doesn't have the blindfold. The bare face, just for right now at least, does have the hair going down. So if you did, like, for example, this head sculpt, you like this face plate, for example, or the face that's on the front of it, and you say you wanted to then use it with the hair up, you simply would just then remove the hair. I'll show you guys in a second, and then you just replace it that way. Getting a closer look first at the head sculpt that we have defaulted, I like the hair down, to be all honest. It does have, again, the spikier hair, so you want to be careful a little bit of that. When we had a look earlier at Fushiguro, for example, he had really spiky hair, and it made things really hard to get the head actually onto the joint. Speaking of the joint, though, just popping the head off the ball joint that's actually at the top of the neck there, I did actually have a hard time, I noticed, to get the head on there. And of course, while I'm doing this, maybe the reasoning why I wasn't putting a lot of pressure on it was obviously I didn't want to put any real pressure against any one of the individual spikes that's on the top of his head, because I wouldn't want to break any of Satoru's hairs. But anyways, we're just going to remove the head for right now. We're going to put the figure down here for right now. And then what we're going to do is I'll show you guys the difference between the 2 hair pieces. Essentially, you've got the hair up, or spikier hair, and then you've got the hair more down. This looks a little bit like Dante. Was it Dante from Devil May Cry? Really like the coloring on this, though. It's kind of more of a purplish gray color, something that's quite popular nowadays. But this one also does have, again, the bandana that's permanently attached, permanently sculpted on the front of his face. There's no way to remove that. So what you will want to do is you're just going to want to detach the top hair piece. If you've seen these reviews already, you sort of know how this all works. You've got the pegs on either side, and you've got like a rectangular peg of plastic that then fits into the sections here located on the top. Do that on the one side, and then we'll go ahead and I'm just going to grab the face from the bottom here, as I find it's easiest to kind of remove it from the hairpiece that way. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, can you use this piece with this hair? No, you can't. It does not work. Obviously, first of all, you've got more of the face down below here. You're really only removing the front of the face on this hairpiece. So obviously, you're going to essentially get the same basic head underneath. But what you're going to do is, now that we've removed this face piece, we're going to then attach it onto this hair. Again, you're just going to line the holes up. So there's the holes on both the sides. It kind of looks like a face, doesn't it? And then what we're going to do is we're going to line it up, and then we're going to plug it in place. Pretty easy. So there's that option available as well. The thing about it, though, is obviously it's going to be leaving a lot of gap spaces on the sides there. So what it also does as well is that you get yourself the bandana, or the headband blindfold piece. I keep calling it headband, the blindfold piece. And that will then also fit over top of his eyes. So you could really go this option as well, but you're going to see a lot more bare of the plastic on the back of it. Now, obviously, again, we just want to make sure I've got the right pieces here. Did I actually remove? I think I did. Okay. What we will want to do is we're going to want to take then the headband, or the blindfold piece, and then this is going to fit over top of his eye. Like that. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take then the hairpiece, and then that's going to line itself back up and fit over top of his eye like that. And then from there, you can go back to the hand that we looked at earlier, and then you can actually have it looking as if he's pulling back the blindfold. I think that's a really nice looking touch. I kept looking at this head sculpt, and I realized that something clearly was missing on the bottom of it. To go back, then I realized the last thing I ended up having to do was take the face plates, take the face part that actually has the blindfold, and you're going to have to remove it also as well from the front of it. And then you're going to take that part, and of course that's the part that's going to sit on the back of his head and allow the means, of course, for that to attach then onto his neck. And you may want to just make sure everything is lined up first before you do this. Take then the blindfold, just kind of wrap it around the back of his head like that. Make sure everything is tight in quarters, and then we're going to go ahead and put the hairpiece back on. Yeah, I knew something was maybe missing. Now we've got ourselves the back of the headpiece, and then from there we can go ahead and revisit the rest of his body. And now, of course, you're having to contend with spikier hair. Just pop it back onto the ball joint, and you're good to go. For the, of course, the rest of the figure. Now, one thing obviously with the jacket that he had, the high jacket, is it's going to have a high collar too. I don't know if I may have even mentioned it when we looked at the rest of the Kaisen line, but all of the collars that I've noticed seem to have a wire frame. They're sort of built into the collar piece, so you can actually bring the collar down, or you can manipulate a little bit more than what you do. Usually what I end up have done so far is I keep kind of pulling the jacket just down a little bit so you can get a chance to kind of see more of the face and more of the neck that's underneath the collar. Nice looking head sculpt though. As for of course, the rest of his outfit, consistently, it's still using the same sort of material as when we looked at the other figures. Sort of like a parachute nylon material. It's about the same color also as well. Kind of more of a kind of dark purple color that they would have used. It sits pretty straight to his body, pretty fit to his body. So while there is a lot of configurations, a lot of articulations that you can actually still get for the figure, like the figure does feel like he's got more of a fitted jacket, especially around his sleeves. You can still move the arms back and forth. You can still move them out, all the things that we're obviously going to be talking about when we look at the articulation end of things. But I do notice while bringing the arms out, it does feel like it starts to get a little tight right here. So you just want to be careful you don't bring the arms too far out, because it may start to rupture the seam that they did so well of sewing this together. Once again, though, he does have a front section to his jacket, but like with the others that we looked at already, none of these flaps do actually open up. Sometimes you're usually treated to things on 6-scale figures like Velcro to kind of keep the clasp closure sealed, but not the case here. They've actually just sewn this shut, so there's no way to actually open up the jacket, so don't try to do that, whatever you do. Further down from that, of course, we got ourselves pants, but now, this time around, unlike the other figures that we looked at before, he actually has a long pair of slacks. I think of it with Fushiguro and also Itadori. Both of the figures actually had more higher pants, the chance to then see the socks that he has underneath. Not the case here when we look at Gojo. Gojo's legs are actually the pants run the full length of the leg. And of course you then got the boots underneath here. The only thing I would say though is that by making the pants so tapered to the lower leg, they're very prone to actually fitting underneath. As you can kind of see, they sort of sit underneath then the boots. So while I'm actually making the articulation points known, I may actually though go back and just kind of make sure that I've got the pant leg fitting over the boots. For some people that wear boots like this, I know I have a pair of boots like this, it's always the thing that I'm always fixing myself. I'm always adjusting the pant leg. And I'm probably going to be doing the exact same thing with Satoru here. Speaking of which, for the figure's articulation, going back to where we looked at for the head sculpt, the head does once again, just bring back the collar a little bit, head is on once again a ball joint, so yes, you can rotate it all the way around. The head looks up fairly easily, and it also does look down fairly easy as well as a rock back and forth. Underneath all this though, it'd be a little harder to kind of show you guys, but he does have also a ball joint right around here. Right around, if you were to be able to look through the collar piece, you'd see like they're a ball joint, and that also gives him an additional afforded articulation point in the neck, giving him quite a much greater reach than what would have been accomplished just with the single ball joint alone. We already talked about the arms. The arms come out, again, like, even though the jacket feels a little tighter to his frame, he actually still easily moves his arms out at least this way, but you'll notice it gets a lot more tighter when you want to bring the arms forward. You can still bring them, I suppose, out quite a distance, but anything past this point, I notice it starts to get really tight here. Just be careful of that. Figure does have a swivel once again in his bicep. Figure possesses, like the other ones before, a double hinge in his elbow, and the hands rotate all the way around. The upper torso is on a ball joint. So like this part right here, in fact, you can kind of follow my finger around. There's actually a cut right there that allows a good articulated ball joint for the top of his torso. But then further down from that, the figure also does have a double hinge or single. So he has a ball joint here, so I guess it's technically a double ball joint. He's got a joint here at the top, and he's got one down below here at the base of his abdomen that allows an additional articulation point for the figure. Legs do split out. That's as far as splits as I was probably going to be giving this guy. Forward goes the legs only to about there. Back goes the legs only to about there. The swivel is obviously at the top of the cut of the thigh. Once again, you got a double hinge on the knee, and then you get the same articulation that we've gotten with all the other figures before. So the figure does have articulation where it counts. And again, I really like the look of this one quite a lot. Trying just to go back and look at the other three figures now, making up the fourth figure now when we look at Satoru Gojo. I think looking at the figures, my favorite still is probably FigZero. I just really like the look of him, especially with the swapped out head sculpt that I ended up putting on him. And again, it seems to be the case. Yeah, it is. Every figure that we've looked at from this line, I end up just swapping out the head sculpts with the ones obviously provided with the figure, but I end up changing the looks to what they started with at the beginning of the reviews, giving them the more exaggerated expressions that they have at the end of the review. Now, obviously, in this case, for Satoru Gojo, while he does have, again, the swappable means of swapping out the front faceplate, this one I actually did like the idea of actually having a little bit of the blindfold, and while I'm not showing it right now, I probably will jump to that in final looks. I like the idea that the blindfold is peaked up like that, which you can then replicate nicely by actually having the fingers attached to the top of the blindfold, giving us a nice look of the figure when you have him on display. Sticking with the promises I did make in this review, I did swap out the hand for Satoru Gojo with the one that looks like he's peeling away the blindfold. A nice way of displaying this figure if you ask the person behind the camera. Granted, then on the other side of the figure's body, I've got him displayed with a Cursed Technique reversal red effect piece. Try saying that 5 times fast. Not probably recommended to have this guy spinning around on a turntable when you have something of that kind of plastic displayed on the end of his finger. It's literally only attached by the end of his finger. Of course, when it comes to displaying this guy on the shelf, he's not going to be displayed on anything that's rotating. So I don't have anything to really worry from that standpoint, but I might find myself grabbing myself like just a generic 6-scale display stand to have this guy displayed just so he doesn't fall off the shelf, especially with this effect piece on the end of his finger. It does look good. I just worry about the longevity of this, especially if it happens to take a tumble. Overall, a great looking figure once again by the folks over at Threezero. If anybody was interested, big fans of Jujutsu Kaisen, would like to get their hands on any of the 4 figures that we've looked at, they are, as far as I know, available as of right now through various online sites. Let me know down below in the comments section what you think of the 4 figures and what would you say is the favorite of yours based on the 4 figures we've already had a look at. Still, I think I'm going to settle on Megumi FigZero as my favorite, but I do really like the look of Satoru Gojo. I think he turned out really nicely as well. But what's your favorite? Let me know down below in the comments section. Once again, a big thank you to the folks over at Threezero, who have, over the last 4 reviews, provided all the samples of the Jujutsu Kaisen figures, now wrapping up things, of course, with Satoru Gojo that we could have a look at in this review. If you guys enjoyed this review, speaking of which, why not hit with a like? If you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing and certainly on board to see more Threezero reviews, well, more will be coming your way. But if you need your fix right away, popping up the very end of this video will be a playlist of other things I've looked at for Threezero in the previous reviews. Definitely going to be a lot more things coming your way, guys. So as always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.